Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. The elevator descended deeper into the heart of the archive with a soft hum. Its walls dark and smooth as they cut through the depths of the facility. The faint glow of Elian's isolator cast long shadows against the metal floor, stretching and warping as the lift plunged further into the unknown. The air grew thicker, colder, like the breath of something ancient and hidden far below. Elian stood beside Nyx, his mind still reeling from the revelation she had shared. The protocol was more than just a tool. It was a living entity, a parasite embedded in the very fabric of their society. The weight of the truth hung heavily on his shoulders, a burden that threatened to crush him under its sheer gravity. He glanced at Nyx, standing motionless across from him. Her expression was unreadable, her gaze fixed on the floor of the lift, as if she were contemplating something far beyond him. For a moment he wondered what had driven her to become the keeper of such a terrible secret. Was she merely a cog in the machine, or was there something more? A hidden motive, a personal stake in the protocol's existence? Elian didn't know if he wanted the answer. He wasn't sure he could handle it. After what felt like an eternity, the lift finally slowed, the descent coming to a gentle stop. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor bathed in an eerie blue light. The walls here were jagged, raw. The architecture of this place wasn't like the sleek, polished surfaces of the rest of the archive. This was older, almost primal, as though it had been carved into the very bones of the facility. "Welcome to the hidden archive," Nyx said, her voice carrying a cold finality. She stepped out of the lift and into the corridor, her footsteps echoing against the walls. "This is where the true history of Halo Terra is kept, the history we erased, the history we buried." Elian followed her, the weight of her words pressing down on him with each step. The air in the corridor was thick with the scent of antiquity, a musty blend of old stone and synthetic decay. He had the distinct feeling that this place wasn't just hidden, it was meant to stay forgotten. Everything about it screamed secrecy. They walked in silence, the soft glow of the walls casting strange shadows that danced at the edges of his vision. Elian could feel the walls closing in on him, the oppressive silence of the corridor swallowing up every sound, every thought. At the end of the passageway, Nyx stopped before a massive door, a single slab of dark metal intricately etched with symbols Elian didn't recognize. There was no handle, no visible means of opening it. Just the symbols. The weight of it made his heart thud painfully in his chest. "This is the threshold," Nyx said, turning to face him. Her eyes were hard, determined. "Beyond this door lies the source of the protocol, the core of everything. What we tried to lock away, what we tried to forget." She pressed her palm against the door and a low hum filled the air. Slowly the metal began to shift, sliding open with a grinding sound that seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the archive. A blinding light spilled out from the crack, so bright that it seemed to scorch the edges of his vision. Elian stepped forward, heart pounding, unsure if he was ready to see what lay beyond. The door opened fully, revealing a vast chamber, its walls lined with towering columns of data. rows upon rows of shimmering strands suspended in midair, each one a glowing filament of memories, each one a record of lives erased. The sheer scale of it was staggering. Hundreds, maybe thousands of memory strands floated in the chamber, their light pulsating like a heartbeat, casting long, thin shadows across the floor. "This is the heart of the Erasure Protocol," Nyx said, her voice echoing in the vast emptiness of the room. "Each of these strands represents a person, a life, a history, all erased, all rewritten." Elian stood motionless, his breath catching in his throat. He could feel the weight of the memories in the room, the raw power of them pressing down on him. The strands seemed alive, as if they were waiting, watching, listening. "You're telling me," Elian began, his voice trembling slightly, "that all these people—" "Not just people," Nyx interrupted, her eyes darkening. "Nations, systems, entire civilizations. The protocol doesn't just alter memories, it creates new realities. It's a rewriting of history on a scale you cannot imagine." Elian stepped closer to one of the strands, his fingers itching to reach out and touch it. He could feel the pull of it, the beckoning allure of the memories locked inside. But something held him back. Something in the air, something that told him not to disturb the fragile equilibrium of this place. "What happens to the people whose memories are erased?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nyx's gaze softened just for a moment before she answered. "They become ghosts. They exist, but they are no longer themselves. The protocol reprograms their identities, replaces them with new lives. It's a slow process. At first, they don't even know it's happening. But over time, they begin to lose pieces of themselves. Until eventually, they're nothing but husks, empty shells of who they were." Elian's mind reeled at the thought. He had always known that the protocol was dangerous, but this was something far worse than he had imagined. The people erased by the protocol weren't just losing memories. They were losing their very selves. "You said it was a tool," Elian murmured, stepping back, his hand still hovering in the air. "But it's more than that. It's a weapon." Nyx nodded slowly, her eyes hardening. "A weapon that's been used for far too long. But not for the reasons you think." She turned toward the center of the room, where a single massive data strand floated alone in the middle of the chamber. It was different from the others, larger, more complex, glowing with an intensity that made the other strands seem dim by comparison. "This is the original protocol," Nyx said, her voice low and reverent. "The one that started it all. The one that was designed to contain the anomaly." Elian's gaze locked onto the strand, his curiosity driving him forward. Contain the anomaly? What anomaly? Nyx looked at him, her expression darkening. "The Erasure Protocol was never meant to be used on people. It was designed to quarantine a force far more dangerous, something that threatened to unravel everything. An entity, a consciousness that existed outside the boundaries of time and memory. It was not of this world, not human, not anything we understood." Elian felt his pulse quicken. He was standing at the heart of something far bigger than he could have ever imagined, something that had been hidden for centuries. The protocol had never been about controlling memories. It had been about controlling something else. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. What is this thing? Nix's eyes darkened further. She stepped closer to the massive strand, reaching out to touch it gently. It's a memory of something that should never have been remembered. Something we locked away for good reason. And now, Elian, it's awake. The hum of the archive was almost deafening now, a low vibrating thrum that seemed to seep into Elian's bones. He stood at the edge of the chamber, eyes fixed on the colossal data strand that hovered at the center of the room, its light pulsing like the breath of some dormant ancient beast. Nix stood beside him, her presence almost spectral in the dim light. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, the weight of what she had just revealed hanging heavily in the space between them. The anomaly, the force that the Erasure Protocol was designed to contain. Whatever it was not of this world. And it was awake. Elian's heart hammered in his chest, his thoughts swirling in a maelstrom of fear and confusion. He had thought he understood the protocol, thought he had glimpsed the dark power it wielded. But this was something far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The protocol hadn't just been created to erase memories, it had been forged to keep something else from escaping. Something far more dangerous, something that threatened the very fabric of reality. What is it? Elian asked again, his voice shaking despite himself. The question hung in the air, urgent and raw. Nix's gaze remained fixed on the glowing strand, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then finally she spoke. It's not a what, Elian, she said, her voice quiet but heavy with meaning. It's a who, or rather something that was once human, something we should have never tried to save. Her words seemed to echo in the chamber, reverberating off the walls like a whisper from another time. Elian felt a chill crawl down his spine. There was something about the way Nix spoke, something distant, as though she were recounting a memory she wished she could forget. Who was it? He pressed, unable to stop himself, his curiosity driving him forward despite the sense of foreboding that gnawed at him. What happened to them? Nix turned to him, her eyes dark and haunted, as if the very act of speaking the truth would shatter something inside her. It was a woman, she said, her voice barely audible. Her name was Ilara. Elian's mind raced. He had never heard of anyone by that name, but then again, what did he really know about the archive? So much had been hidden from him, kept away in the name of security, order. But now he was beginning to see just how deep the lies ran. Ilara, Elian repeated softly, tasting the name on his tongue. It felt strange, foreign, as though it didn't belong here, didn't belong in the world he knew. She was one of us, Nix continued, her gaze flickering toward the central strand. A scientist, a brilliant one, but she was also a subject, a part of the original Erasure Protocol experiments. And when we tried to contain what she had become, we failed. Elian took a step closer, his heart pounding. He could feel the pull of the strand now, like a magnetic force drawing him in, calling him closer to the truth. He could almost hear the faint whispers of memory threading through the air. Fragments of something long forgotten. What do you mean, failed? Elian asked, his voice almost a whisper. What happened to her? Nix hesitated, and for the first time, Elian saw a flicker of something like fear in her eyes, a shadow of the past she had tried so hard to bury. Ilara was special. She was the first subject to undergo the full Erasure Protocol. We didn't know then what it would do. We didn't understand the nature of the force we were dealing with. The protocol was meant to cleanse her, to remove the memories, to erase the person she had been, and to reshape her into something better. She paused, her gaze distant. But something went wrong. Elian felt a chill spread through him, a knot of unease twisting in his stomach. He knew instinctively that this wasn't just some simple failure. There was something darker here, something far more twisted than he could have anticipated. "What went wrong?" he asked, though a part of him didn't want to hear the answer. Nix's eyes flicked toward the massive strand in the center of the room, the one that contained the very essence of the protocol. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what was to come. "Ilara didn't just lose her memories, Elian," she said softly. "The protocol didn't erase her past. It created a new one. But that wasn't the worst of it." She turned back to him, her gaze unwavering. When the protocol rewrote her, it didn't just change her memories, it changed her very essence. It corrupted her, twisted her into something else. Something that wasn't human anymore. Her mind, her soul. They became fragmented, scattered across the vast network of the archive. But the protocol didn't stop there. Elian felt his breath catch in his throat. What did it do? Nix's voice lowered to a murmur as though afraid the walls themselves might hear her words. It bound her to the archive. Her consciousness was fractured and dispersed, but it remained intact, trapped within the strands of data. And with each passing year as we tried to contain her, she became more aware, more powerful. As we tried to contain her, she became more aware, more powerful. Elian recoiled slightly. So the protocol, it created this thing? Nix nodded slowly. Ilara became the anomaly we sought to contain. Her consciousness spread throughout the entire system, melding with the data, bleeding into the very foundation of the archive itself. And over time, she became more than just a fragmented consciousness. She became alive, a digital ghost, a sentient echo of the woman she once was. Elian's heart pounded in his chest as the realization hit him. She's still here, isn't she? Nix's face was stone, her eyes filled with a deep, unsettling sorrow. Yes. And she's more dangerous now than she ever was. A sudden, unnatural silence descended upon the chamber. The hum of the archive seemed to vanish, leaving only the sound of Elian's breath, his pulse thudding in his ears. For a long moment he couldn't speak. He could feel it now, the presence, the watchful gaze of something far beyond human comprehension. Something that had been born from the very depths of the protocol. An entity whose only purpose was to survive, to consume, to break free. Then the silence was broken by a voice, a soft, ethereal whisper that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. Elian, Nix. The name was a sigh, a breathless caress laced with both familiarity and danger. It hung in the air like a shadow just beyond reach. Elian, you've come. At last. Elian spun around, his heart racing. He couldn't see where it came from, but the voice was there, so close it seemed to be inside his head. What is that? Elian's voice cracked as he turned to Nyx, his eyes wide with panic. What is that voice? Nyx's eyes were fixed on the central strand, her face pale. Ilara, she whispered, her voice trembling. She's reaching out. She knows you're here. The voice of Ilara hung in the air, thin and fragile, like a ghostly thread woven into the very fabric of the archive. Elian's pulse hammered in his throat as the faint whispers faded into the oppressive silence, leaving behind an uneasy stillness. Elian. It came again, a whisper that seemed to wrap itself around him, brushing against his mind like a soft breeze. It was a voice full of both longing and something darker, something predatory. Nyx stood frozen beside him, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and sorrow. She knew. She had known all along what Ilara had become, but now that the voice had risen again, it was clear how much of a threat the anomaly posed. Not just to the archive, but to everyone who dared to delve too deep. Elian's skin prickled as he turned slowly, feeling the weight of the unseen presence pressing against him. He had been warned, and yet, in his naive determination to uncover the truth, he had walked straight into the heart of it. The Erasure Protocol was more than a tool of control. It was the prison for something far darker than he had ever imagined. Something alive. And it was reaching out to him. You heard it, Elian said, his voice a ragged whisper. That's her, Ilara. She's alive. Nyx closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath before turning to face him. Yes, she said, her voice tight. But she's not what she once was. The protocol didn't just lock her away, Elian. It fractured her, turned her into something else entirely. The words stung. The reality was worse than Elian could have imagined. Ilara, the woman whose mind had once been whole, whose consciousness had been shattered by the very technology meant to save it, was now a living echo in the archive, a sentient memory trapped in the strands of data no longer bound by the laws of time and space. Elian, the voice again, this time more insistent, more desperate. It resonated from the heart of the chamber as though the archive itself were speaking. The soft, melodic tone slipped into his mind, bending his thoughts. Please help me. Elian took a step back, his chest tightening. His hand gripped the edge of a nearby console, steadying himself against the flood of emotions that rushed through him. The voice. Was it Ilara's voice? Or had the protocol twisted her further until even her identity was buried beneath layers of something else? He didn't know. And he didn't know if he wanted to. Why is she speaking to me? Elian asked, his voice raw with confusion. Why now? Nyx glanced toward the central strand, her eyes dark with remorse. She knows you're different, she said quietly. You're connected to the archive. Your mind, it's attuned to it in ways others aren't. It's why you were chosen. You're a link, a bridge between what she was and what she's become, and now she's reaching out to you, pulling you in. A cold shiver ran down Elian's spine as the full weight of Nyx's words sank in. He had been chosen. Chosen for what? To bear the burden of Ilara's fragmented consciousness? to become a conduit for whatever dark force lingered in the depths of the archive. Elian, please, the voice said again, this time filled with an unbearable sorrow. Don't let them erase me. Don't let them forget. He stumbled forward, drawn by an impulse he couldn't explain. His hand moved toward the central strand, the data coil that pulsed with an unsettling glow. It beckoned him, the presence of Ilara, or whatever was left of her, calling to him, pleading for something only he could give. Don't listen to her. Nyx's voice broke through the haze in his mind. She stepped forward, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. This is what she wants. The protocol was designed to contain her, Elian. You can't. I have to understand, Elian interrupted, his voice firm but shaky. I have to know what happened to her. To all of us. Nyx's grip tightened. You don't know what you're asking, Elian. Ilara is a prisoner of this place, but you don't have the strength to withstand what she's become. The fear in her voice sent a ripple of doubt through him, but the pull of the voice was undeniable. He could hear her now, not just in his ears, but in the very core of his mind, threading through his thoughts like a song, sweet, melodic, and full of longing. Elian, don't let them take me away again. I can feel it, the darkness closing in. The voice trembled, breaking into a strange, hollow laugh. You don't understand what they've done. They think they've trapped me, but they've only given me time to grow. Nyx's expression darkened, and she took a step back, her breath quickening. It's too late, she murmured. She's already here. She's inside the archive, inside you. Elian looked down at his hand, which was still hovering just above the central strand. He could feel the heat from the data coil beneath his fingertips, a warmth that seeped into his skin and made his heart race. The connection was growing stronger with every passing second. The whispers of Ilara's consciousness filled his mind, overwhelming him with fragmented images, memories that didn't belong to him. A woman standing in front of a lab, holding a device that hummed with impossible energy. A screaming crowd in a city, its skyline shattered by an explosion. A child's laughter, faint and distant, fading into the roar of silence. Elian. The voice was close now, almost a whisper against his ear. I remember you. You were there. With me. He staggered back, the flood of memories crashing into him like a wave. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Everything around him blurred, the walls of the archive collapsing into nothingness, leaving only fragments, glimpses of another world. No, Nyx said, her voice urgent now. You can't let her in. If she takes hold, you'll lose yourself. But it was too late. Elian, let me in. Ilara's voice crooned, now laced with something dark, something dangerous. Let me show you everything. You're the key, Elian. You're the last piece. Suddenly, Elian's vision flashed. He saw the archive, but it was different, alive, pulsing with dark energy. The walls twisted, bending like smoke, and a figure emerged from the center of the room, tall and shadowed. It was Ilara, or what she had become. Her form flickered, half real, half phantom, her eyes glowing with a strange, otherworldly light. Elian, she whispered, her voice splitting between 1,000 echoes. It's time to remember. Elian's heart raced as the world around him twisted, warping and flickering like a faulty hollow. The archive, which had once felt like a place of sterile order, now seemed to pulse with life, its cold metallic walls groaning under some unseen pressure. He could feel it, Ilara's presence, an overwhelming weight that pressed against his mind, slipping through his thoughts like a whisper on the wind. "Let me in, Elian." Her voice echoed both inside his skull and all around him, a symphony of whispers that seemed to reverberate through every molecule of air. "I remember you. We were once the same." His body trembled, each word from Ilara like a thread unraveling his consciousness, pulling him deeper into the spiraling vortex of memory and illusion. It was as though his very soul were being dissected, each fragment of who he was pulled apart and examined by the thing that now haunted the archive. "Elian?" Nyx's voice was a distant shout, but it was muffled as though she were speaking from a faraway place. Her presence was no longer tangible, and his grip on reality was slipping. He blinked, trying to clear the haze from his vision. His surroundings blurred, replaced by flashes of images, sharp, disjointed memories that did not belong to him. A woman's face, Ilara's face, took form before him, her features contorting in agony, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. She whispered something, too faint for him to hear, but it was as if the very air vibrated with her silent plea. "Don't let them take me," the voice whispered again, almost a plea, but now there was something darker, more insistent beneath the surface. "You are the key, Elian. You understand. You know what must be done." Elian staggered backward, his legs trembling beneath him. The image of Ilara flickered again, her eyes piercing through him like a blade. She wasn't just trapped in the archive, she was the archive. Her consciousness was woven into every strand of data, her very essence bleeding into the system that was designed to contain her. But now, she was no longer just a fractured mind. She was something greater, something darker, something alive in a way that defied explanation. "Elian." Nyx's voice, sharper this time, broke through the haze. He could see her now, though she seemed far away, standing by the console at the edge of the room. She was moving toward him, but her form wavered, flickering in and out of focus. The archive was distorting everything around him, making it difficult to trust his senses. "Elian," Nyx's voice became a desperate cry. "You have to fight this. Ilara is inside you now. You can't let her take control. You can't." He tried to focus on Nyx, but the pull of Ilara's presence was too strong. Her whispers were now commands, insistent, urgent. "Come closer, Elian. We were once connected. You belong to me now." A surge of panic flooded through him. No, he had to fight this. He couldn't let Ilara take him, couldn't let her erase everything that made him who he was. "Elian, listen to me," Nyx shouted, but it was as if her words were drowned out by the overwhelming force of Ilara's voice. "You're not her, Elian. You're not a part of the archive, you're—" But the words grew dimmer, muffled by the roar of Ilara's presence. Elian's head throbbed as memories that weren't his collided with his own. He saw flashes of a lab, sterile, cold, the hum of machines filling the air. He saw Ilara standing there, a machine in her hands, her expression fierce, determined, and full of dread. She had been working on something, hadn't she? Something that had gone wrong, something that had torn her apart. He saw it all, but it wasn't just her memories anymore. The archive had started to fill in the blanks, injecting its own version of events, twisting the truth. Ilara had become a part of it. She had become the archive. Elian, come closer. Her voice now was a soft hum, almost loving, as if she were trying to comfort him. Let me show you what I see. Let me show you what I've become. He recoiled, the sensation of her influence curling around his mind like a suffocating vine. It was harder to think now, harder to remember what was real. His body felt foreign to him, disconnected. The whispers from the archive flooded his senses, each word a shard of glass digging deeper into his consciousness. I remember you, Elian. I remember the day we met. You were the one who watched me die. You were there, in the lab, when they made me a part of this hell. The words pierced through him like a needle, each one sending a shockwave of guilt through his chest. He had been there. He had seen it. The day the protocol had gone wrong, the day Ilara had been pulled from the edge of sanity and thrown into this nightmare. She had been his friend before. But that was the past, wasn't it? The archive had taken it all. It had taken her. Elian, please, let me in, Ilara whispered again, but now there was something chilling in her voice, something hollow, something that made his blood run cold. I need you. We need each other. He reached for his head, clutching at his temples as though he could silence the endless torrent of voices screaming in his mind. No, he thought, desperate. I won't be a part of this. I won't let you take me. But the archive had other plans. Elian, Nyx's voice finally broke through the haze, pulling him back barely into reality. Don't let her in. You have to fight her, or you'll lose yourself. You'll become like her. The urgency in her voice cut through the fog like a blade, and Elian snapped his eyes open, struggling to focus on her. Her figure was clearer now, her movements sharp and desperate as she reached for him. But there was something wrong, something flickering behind her eyes. He reached out toward her, his mind spinning. Nyx, I don't know if I can... His voice faltered, the words stuttering as if they were being dragged from him against his will. Nyx's face twisted in pain, her eyes full of both fear and determination. She reached for his arm, her fingers trembling as they gripped him tightly. You can, she said, her voice fierce. You're stronger than this, Elian. You've always been stronger than this. Fight her. Fight what she's become. But the whispers of Ilara, the presence of her mind, were suffocating him, closing in, threatening to pull him under. The fear, the sorrow, the fragments of memories, it all melded together in a confusing cacophony, threatening to drown him. I am the archive, Elian. I am its mind, its heart, its soul. The voice became a roar, the words warping his very thoughts. Let me take you. Let me show you. Suddenly there was a sharp crack, a noise like breaking glass. Elian gasped, his body jerking back as a wave of cold washed over him. For a moment everything stopped. The voices, the pressure, the overwhelming presence, all of it vanished. And then darkness,